Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. Today we have Chris Hall, and he is a local Reading financial advisor. He's with Reading Financial Advisor. It's his own business. He's been doing this for 8 years. He's got a lot of knowledge to share about financial advising, about retiring. If you're in your 40s, we talked a lot about if you're in your 40s and you don't necessarily have everything saved up or you don't have anything for retirement yet, you definitely want to tune in to get some really good nuggets on what you should be doing right now. So thank you so much for joining us. Chris, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for being here. So Chris Hall, he is a financial advisor for looks like 8 years.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. What did you do before that?
I spent the first part of my adult life as a pharmaceutical rep. I worked 10 years as a pharmaceutical rep.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so Chris is with Reading Financial Advisors here in Reading. He specializes in developing investment strategies and wealth management, including estate planning, which is very important. He was born and raised in Reading, California, right here, and is very involved in our local Reading community. So super awesome. Looking to help people develop strategies to make their money last longer and to help them live gracefully in retirement. If he can help them change their family tree forever when it comes to wealth accumulation, that's his dream. Personal passions, he's currently passionate about making sure that all of our local Reading youth have enough to eat. Wow. I'd like to hear more about that. I put
Definitely
on the Chris Hall Half K charity event that has raised well over $60,000 for local kids to eat. I'm also the current president of the Reading Sundale Kiwanis, which helps support those programs to feed those kids. Wow.
Yeah.
Topics of interest. I also like to talk about real estate. I own a handful of rentals, and I'm currently developing some land over in Enterprise.
Yep.
Very cool. Where at in Enterprise?
So it's over by Enterprise High School, and then you go kind of south towards like you're going to Save Mart, and there's just some acreage tucked back behind there.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of like you wouldn't know it was there unless you were looking for it.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah.
Very cool.
I've owned it for like 20, 25 years.
Oh, wow. Like building some apartments? Or?
Originally, I wanted to do a subdivision back there, but it's going to be like too tough because the neighborhood's like 1,300 square foot houses.
Oh, wow.
And you just can't make that pencil.
Yeah.
Not today. So
yeah.
So what I'll probably end up doing is I'm doing some lot line adjustments right now because I actually had some parcels, dedicated parcels, to bring most of the parcels up to the front where the road is.
Oh, I see.
And then I'll put in some duplexes back there.
Oh,
and then,
nice.
And then I'll have a nice little 5-acre remainder parcel, and then that might end up being like a duplex subdivision.
Got it. Oh, wow.
So
very cool.
That would be nice if it works.
How many acres is it?
7 acres total.
Oh, wow. That's a nice little plot of land in Reading.
Yeah. And so it's, where Grace Baptist Church is, used to be Liberty High School.
Yep.
So across the street from there, you look back, there's a bunch of oaks back there. I own the oaks.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then you also are happy to talk about interest rates and how it affects both the bond market and stock market.
Right.
It's pretty important for
I figured it was pretty important for your clients.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, for sure, yeah. Interest rates is always a big topic, and I'm sure it's a big topic for you guys as well.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've been doing this for a long time. I actually started investing when I was 16 years old. I started buying. Actually, when 12 years old, I started buying troy ounces of silver with my tip money from my grandparents' restaurant.
Wow.
When I was 16, my grandma opened a custodial account for me and was like, "Hey, he's going to do the trades." The stockbroker was like, "I'm not. I mean, he's 16. He can't do the trades." And she's like, "Hey, he's going to do the trades." And he was like, "Yes, ma'am."
Wow.
And so I bought Walmart with my first stock when I was 16 years old. So not a bad pick.
No, I'm sure it's done great.
So, but I really, for as long as I've been doing investments, I've never really been much of a fan of bonds. Bonds have always been kind of like a glorified savings account. If you track it over the last 120 years, it's like just barely above inflation.
Yeah.
And so I've never really loved it. But in this market that we've been in recently, it's been phenomenal to look at the bond side of things.
Oh, really?
So I push a lot more bonds into people's portfolios in the last year and a half than I probably ever have in my life.
Wow. Why is that?
Well, so bonds and interest rates, bond prices and interest rates are basically a teeter-totter. So if you've got interest rates going up, that means bond prices are going down. If you've got interest rates going down, that means bond prices are going up. So we're at this spot right now where the bond prices are really declined because interest rates are so high. So if you go out and you buy a bond, right? So if you buy a bond, let's just say AT&T or Verizon, doesn't matter, and it's paying roughly 7%, you're getting 7% guaranteed return on your investment. from that bond. And that could be a 20 years, 30 years. To put that kind of a number on a bond for 20 or 30 years
pretty
is
good.
pretty unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
especially when the target inflation is 2%.
Exactly. Yeah.
Makes
So
sense.
even your most conservative people, they love a 7 or even a 6 would be fine. The other cool part about it is since the bonds are down low, right, we're buying them at a discount because of where they're at interest rate wise. When interest rates start to drop, you're not only going to lock that number in, but your bond value is going to go up.
So they could sell it for a profit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't have a crystal ball. My magic wand's broken. But I would tell you that, we're looking at equity-like returns on those bond purchases.
Wow.
15%, 10, 15, 20% possibly.
Yeah, because as inflation comes down, interest rates get better, and then people are okay with a 3% return, maybe 4% return.
Right.
And so they're willing to pay a premium for that 7%.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
That's right. So it's been really, tied, like as far as, with your market, the interest rates have been kind of clobbering you guys. But, as far as my market, it's just a lot of times I think working with a financial advisor is knowing where to go because there's always going to be opportunity and there are always going to be obstacles.
Yeah.
So it's just trying to find the opportunity, the sort of silver lining, if you will.
Yeah. And there's always opportunity.
Absolutely.
In any market.
Yep.
In any market, there's always opportunity. Yeah. That's
like I think about your market and I think about how all the people who are sitting on the sidelines right now waiting for a 5%. And they need to know that when that goes down to 5%, them and all of their friends are going to come off the sidelines at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's going to push, in my opinion, that's going to push pricing up.
Yeah.
So whatever you might by getting a lower interest rate, you're gonna turn right around and pay for it in the price of the home.
Yeah, I just had this conversation with a buyer this morning actually. So he was asking me the same question. He's like, Pete, so like I'm hearing all this chatter about the Feds lowering the interest rates. He's like, should I be waiting for that to happen before I purchase? And I didn't really say whether he should or not because I think that you should be looking at the home really, but in a long term, it's going to be his primary residence. So it's like long term, look for the great house that you want to find for you and your family. Make sure it's affordable because, like to your point, if the interest rates do come down, which they have been coming down, if we see 5% or maybe in the 4s, I personally think that we'll see another 2021 or close to it 2022 when you're bidding $20,000-$30,000 more because there's maybe 10 offers because there is a lot of buyers and a lot of sell and buys on the sidelines. A lot of people that want to upgrade, a lot of people that need to downgrade, and right now it just doesn't make sense for someone that's sitting at let's say 3% to go to let's say 6.5 or even 7. But if rates go to 4, then that gap comes down, and remember, income has come up too.
Right.
Income has raised, and so the affordability might be similar to what it was when rates were at 3 because income has increased.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sort of a fan of like if you have a house and you don't need a house, then that's one thing, right? But if you're out there looking for a house, I would tell people don't let the rate stop you.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've had real estate now for 27 years now.
Wow.
My first house was a duplex. I bought a duplex.
Oh wow.
Lived in one half, rented out the other half.
Yeah.
And I've owned real estate since then, and I've picked up a little piece here and there, a little piece here and there.
Yeah.
And I would just tell people like, if you're waiting for a rate, don't worry about it because the rates are going to go up and the rates are going to go down, and when they go down, refinance.
Yeah.
And then you're really only kind of with that rate for. I mean, at this point in the stage of the game, you're going to be like if you got a 6.5% rate right now today.
Yeah.
I mean, you really realistically could probably refi that and enter from 12 to 18 months at that 4.5-5%.
Yeah.
But once again, but all the other people are going to be off the sidelines then. So now you're going to be in a super competitive market.
Yeah. No, yeah, makes total sense. But how did you go from being a pharmaceutical rep to being financial planner?
Yeah, so I loved financial stuff from like day one. Like I said, when I was 12, I used to take troy ounces of silver. I would open the paper. There was a thing called the paper, and I would open it up every day and I would track what the price of silver was selling for. And I would put it in a little notebook and like make my own bar graphs.
Yeah.
Like it was pretty nerdy stuff. And then, 16 years old buying stocks. I have like had absolute crazy stock purchases that, are super great to brag about. And I've also lost, decent money too. When you're younger and you just bet it all on black, it sometimes doesn't come up. So that was all learning lessons. When it kind of just led me into my job as a pharmaceutical rep. I put together my 401k. It was doing really well because I had a lot of background knowledge. And it came down to like almost everybody on the West Coast that got hired by Pfizer would call me and be like, hey, I hear you're the guy to talk to about setting my 401k up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I started getting,
Nice.
these calls from Fresno and Bakersfield to like, hey, will you help me?
Yeah.
And so I just liked doing it. So
Yeah.
it wasn't something I was doing for money. I just liked doing it. And my opinion was of a financial advisor is that you had to go to like some special school. Like I assumed that you had to go to USC School of Wharton if you wanted to be a financial advisor.
Wow.
So after I got laid off from pharmaceuticals, I opened my own company. I opened actually 2 companies. And both of them were fairly successful, but I wanted more like of a day job with the healthcare and things like that.
You
So
opened up 2 companies for pharmaceutical?
No, just for myself. Just
got
one of
it.
them was a online marketing company.
Oh, okay.
And another one was called Gridiron Alumni, which is where I put on alumni football games for people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah, it was an amazing event planning system. I learned a lot about marketing doing that.
Yeah.
It was really cool to watch people like get so excited about putting football gear back on. We would do full contact, full gear games.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
I did several games where there was over 3,500 people in the stands too.
Wow.
Just to watch 2 teams. Like, you go to the South, it's so big.
Really?
We went to a game in Savannah, Georgia, and we showed up at like 10 a.m. for like 6 p.m. game to like get ready, and there were already people tailgating and playing cornhole at an alumni football game.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was pretty fun. But so I stopped doing that one specifically because I had 2 small children, and the year that I had the greatest year I had, I was gone 17 weeks out of the year, and I'm like, it just wasn't worth it. I could make less money and stay home, and that's what I would. So I started doing dental equipment. A friend of mine said, hey, you should do this instead. So I did that. I hated it. Like I just really did not enjoy dental equipment and supplies. And then I got recruited for Edward Jones. They call it was kind of a weird deal. So nice guy here in town, Scott Brown, his wife Jill, and my wife at the time, Ellie. They were at some event, and she was talking about the house that they had just purchased, and my ex was like, didn't you just like get a house like 6 months ago or something? And she's like, yeah, we upgraded it, which led to the idea of like, well, what does he do for a living?
Yeah.
And then Jill immediately was like, he works for Edward Jones. He's a financial advisor. And she's like, Chris needs to be a financial advisor. And so she calls me and she's like, do you hear about Edward Jones? I'm like, I don't even know what that is. So I thought they were a real estate company, honestly.
Wow.
So then they just kind of let me know, that they would train me. They would help me get licensed, all the things like that. And I was like, this is perfect. This is exactly what I wanted to do. And so I joined up, and I've never looked back. My only regret is I didn't do it sooner.
So Edward Jones is an amazing company.
No, it's a great industry to be in. I'm a coach at heart, so I coach a lot of sports, and I'm always like interested in the community and stuff like that. So as a coach, as a person who's interested in teaching people things, it's a great way to like quote unquote make a living.
Yeah.
I loved Edward Jones. I worked for him for 8 years. I did decide to go out on my own this year.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize.
Yeah, so Reading Financial Advisors is my company, and I left Edward Jones to start it.
That's awesome.
It really started out as my location was pretty bad where I was at. I was right next to the Walgreens on Churn Creek in Cypress. And so we literally had like drug addicts and homeless on our porch like every day.
Wow.
And
I know exactly that location too. Yeah.
Yeah. And we tried so hard to get out of there. I had the support of my local regional leader to get out of that spot. But then, you run into Edward Jones is a really, really big company. And so I had found a really nice location that was like looking over the river, and it was like a good sized rent. And it took them about 9 months just to come back with a tenant improvement quote.
Oh, wow.
And we're talking like new paint, new flooring. They wanted some new doors in there.
Yeah.
And the quote was $249,000.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and so the way that works is that they'll pay for it up front, but ultimately comes out of my profit and loss statement.
Oh, you eventually pay for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, at that point, that was when I was like, hey, listen, I'm either going to be stuck here or I'm going to pay a small fortune to move.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to pay a small fortune to move, then I'm going to do it for me.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Which is what I did.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Nice. And where's your location at now?
It's 5000 Bocelli Lane in Suite 104, which is on the ground floor. It's right across the street from the Costco, the new Costco. It's
it's just right down the road. Yeah. Okay. Very cool. So do you own that building?
It's like a business condo, so kind of like your situation here.
Yeah.
So I do own the business condo.
Got it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. Switching gears a little bit, thank you for sharing that story.
Sure.
It's a pretty cool story how you got into the financial planning. What are your thoughts on the current financial market? I know there's a lot of worry about maybe a recession, a lot of worry maybe the stock market crashing. It's a broad question, but maybe touch on recession fears, economic slowdown. What are your thoughts?
Sure. Well, to be fair, we are already in a recession. The government has acknowledged it, but we've been in one for a while now. It's just they kind of moved the goalpost
They
on
moved
it.
the dial.
Yeah, they're like, this isn't a recession anymore. This is, and so we kind of already been in one for a while.
Yeah.
It is getting a little bit deeper, and that's what the Fed wanted to see. So that's happening, and that's why the Fed is now talking about lowering interest rates in the September meeting. But economically, we're already kind of in one, and you can kind of just tell if you don't watch financial stuff and you don't like get up every morning and look at Yahoo or MSM or something like that, or MSN, you're gonna see like people are laying people off. When you see when you people like 1,000 people laid off, 10,000 people laid off, 536 stores are closing. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. That's a recession. And so we're in one already. Economically, the market is typically about anywhere from 6 to 9 months ahead of the economic cycle. So if you notice, we've had nothing but bad news all year long. Yet the market's up about 15%.
Yeah.
So the market kind of prices things in as they go, and the market, as I see it, is saying, "Hey, we know the recession's here, and it's also going to get worse, but we also know it's going to come out of it. The sooner we get into it, officially, the sooner we get into it, the sooner we get out of it." And so that's where my head's at as a financial planner is like, okay, what are we in right now for the next 6 to 9 months? Not like, what are we in right now so we can be right now? Because like right now, I was planning 6 months ago. I was already, like when things started to waffle in November of 2021, excuse me, when they started to waffle, I started making changes right then and there. I was like, inflation's coming. We're going to have issues. Let's start moving the stuff around. And, part of being a good financial advisor is not only growing people's money, but saving it from loss when it's time to lose.
Right.
And the market does go down. It definitely does. But you can make certain moves to make it go down less. And then like right now, again, going back to the whole bonds thing, you can also make certain things that are a winner. They just may not be a winner today or tomorrow. It's I always say it's not timing the market, it's time in the market. And so having that long-term focus, but also kind of like looking quarterly, semi-annually at what's going on with the economic cycle. It's a good blend of it.
So what I heard you say is that obviously we're still in a recession, and the markets are kind of 6 to 9 months ahead. In other words, they're priced in 6 months in advance. Is that what I heard you say?
Yes. Other than you're going to get some volatility. Anytime there's uncertainty, there's going to be volatility. So kind of going back to like what we're talking about with the market itself collapsing. Like I first of all don't believe in such a thing as collapsing. I mean, it's definitely going to recede. It's going to come back, and it's going to grow. It's going to recede and come back, and it's going to grow. But ultimately, it's going to grow. I always tell people when you hear the word correction, think sale. Right. So if I like a certain kind of soda, right, like I like Diet Coke, and it normally costs $8.99 for a 12-pack. Well, when it costs $7.99 for a 12-pack, or let's say $4.99 for a 12-pack, I'm just gonna buy more 12-packs of Diet Coke, right? Because I like that, and it's at a good price. But when we get into the market, we're so emotional about it, right? So we like Google, and we like Facebook, and we like these other things. And I'm not making a recommendation there, just so we're clear. I'm just saying, we like certain things. And then they lose value, and we automatically want to turn around and sell them. And I say, well, would you go take all the Diet Coke out of your fridge and go sell it back to the store for $4.99 when it's on sale? It's like, no, we wouldn't do that because that doesn't make sense.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And for me, time in the market versus timing the market makes complete sense, because if you go back from the beginning of the stock market, it's never like, it's consistently growing on average every year, right? So like time in the market, I think with a lot of maybe people my age, or I'm 43, 44, so like these are very important years for my retirement, right? So like any money that I get that's over and above to be able to put away, right? I think for me, and there could be other listeners that also have this same mindset or challenge in their mind, is like, I always think I don't want to necessarily invest this money because I may need it if my business goes down or as reserves or something, what happens if I need to get it, right? I think that's a big question that people may have when investing. Maybe they don't want to risk the money in the market because what if they need it?
Right. Right. And that is something that we always want to make sure is a factor of investing is what we call timeline. How much time do you have between when you want this money and when you don't want it, or when you don't want it and when you do need it? And so like, if you know, you're going like something I run into all the time is people who are like, hey, I have this money, but I want to use this as a down payment on a house.
Oh yeah.
Well, they could turn around and tell me they need it tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They could find that house tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or it could take a year. You know what I mean? But either way, we're not going to put all that into the market and hope the market does well in that anywhere from 1 day to 1 year.
Yeah.
So we need a longer timeline for those kinds of investments. So with those folks, I typically will say, okay, let's put it into a nice money market.
Yeah.
Typically speaking, the banks have money markets at like 0.1 now. Maybe 0.01 to 0.1. We can find money market funds that are paying 5%.
And a money market is just simply a place where you can put your money.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's like the old-fashioned savings account. All of the things that you look at is that, I used Federated. There's tons of them. JP Morgan has them, all these things. And what happens is they invest all the money into things that have real stability to them. So like T-bills, T-bonds, they buy their own CDs. They do all this stuff with the money. And so let's say that they make like 5.25% on average, and then they're going to basically give you 5. So they're just running the money, kind of like doing it for you, and they take a quarter point for themselves, and the rest of it comes to you in 5%.
Makes sense.
So whereas the banks, they're typically doing exactly the same thing, but they're only going to give you 0.1.
Correct.
So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So what you're saying is timeline. How soon am I going to need that money? Or when do I think I'm going to need that money? I think for me, I just need to make sure I live below my means.
That's true.
You know what I mean? So like it's conservative as possible, keeping my monthly expenses as low as possible so that I do have extra every month.
Right. And I mean, the rule of thumb is that if you start in your 20s, as long as you put away 10% of your gross, you'll totally be fine. Wow. And then once you get to like mid 30s, then that number needs to be 15% of your gross.
Oh, wow.
And so if you are
you keep increasing it.
Yeah, because you have to catch up.
Yeah.
So like,
if you're starting in your 30s.
If you're starting in your mid 30s, you need 15%.
If you're starting in your 40s, it's probably like 40%.
Yeah. So and that can be, when you're young, if you've got a 401k at the local place that you're working at, let's call you having a career, not like like a McDonald's job or something like that. They're going to give you some match too. So let's say you put in 12%, they put in 3%, then they're giving that's 15%. That's a good number right there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So those are good numbers to kind of stick with as far as investing. When you get into situations where people have like more money, like let's say they have like $500,000 sitting in the bank account. Well, that's when we go, okay, how much of this do you really need as savings, quote unquote, emergency cash?
Right.
Then that money we would put into something that we would need
long term,
like some long term ROI on. Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. Nice.
I mean, believe me, so when 2008 happened, trillions and trillions of dollars left the stock market and went into savings accounts.
Wow.
And has never come back.
It's still in savings?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, that was a huge deal. 2008, 2009 was a huge deal. People left and never came back. And I still have people tell me, I lost everything in 2008. And I often say, did you have a financial advisor? And the answer is always no. And then I say, did you just take it out? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, that's why you lost, because you took it out. So if in 2008, which is by far the worst time period of our lives, if you had just stayed in, not made any changes, not tried to take the obstacles and turn them into opportunities, but just left it, you would have had your money back in 3 years, which again, while you're going through it, when you're going through it, that's a long time, right? But
3 years,
But now you look and go, that was 2011. It's 24 now. Like that wasn't that far ago.
And then you had a ride. You had an amazing run.
Yeah, and then I was going to say 3 years later, you doubled again. So I try to put it in terms that people can understand. Say if you had $300,000 in 2008 in a 401k and it went down to 150 and you were terrified. If you just left it 3 years later, 2011, you'd have been back to 300. 2014, you'd have had $600,000.
Wow.
Yeah, roughly. Those are just rough, based on what happened in the market.
Yeah.
Everybody obviously did a little bit different.
So the point to all of this is be patient.
The term I like to use is get rich slow scheme.
I like it. And there's many things that I've done where I've tried to get rich quicker and it slowed me down even faster.
Yep.
You
I
know?
agree with that.
Yeah.
I've done that too. That's what I was saying. Early on in my investing, I think I tell people this too, is like, a lot of people sit around and they try to look for the edges, and it really is a slow and steady wins the race type of a deal.
Yeah.
Not that you can't find an opportunity here and there, but I mean, I have people who call me and they're like, I want to get this penny stock. And you're like, okay, why?
Yeah.
That's, I think, the value of financial planning, like where we focus on the goal of retirement instead of the goal of performance. So if you focus on performance, you're always going to be looking for an edge. But if I can show you on paper how 6 to 8% long term gets you to your goal, then we don't have to play with the edges anymore.
Yeah.
And it makes for not only a better portfolio overall, but it makes for a better ride.
Cool. So I got some more questions. This is good.
Sure.
You work with investors and families saving for retirement every day. Where does real estate fit in for someone that is wanting to retire? Or what's your opinion on real estate in general and for retirement purposes?
Yeah, so I think you would talk to most financial advisors, and they kind of like shun real estate, right? Because quite frankly, they don't get paid on it.
Yeah.
But I personally own real estate myself. I would tell you that I do this all day long, and I would tell you that most people who are doing well as a retired person will typically have rental income as well. So I put it in the, we always say don't put all our eggs in one basket, right? So I believe that the stock market is a basket, and I also believe that the real estate market is a basket. And so I wouldn't tell anybody to put all their money in the stock market. I wouldn't tell anybody to put all their money in the real estate market. Even though you and I both know, like if you're a realtor, like all your money's in realty, right? There's I'm like, hey, you want to put any money in that simple IRA? And they're like, no, I can go buy another rental, And so I would say that, it has to be a complementary piece to the portfolio, and not that everybody has to have rentals. But I would tell you that every time I do a really successful, I'm talking like successful to where not only are they going to retire fine, but their kids are going to be fine too.
Oh, right.
That's almost always including real estate as well.
Yeah. I definitely agree. I think real estate is a big part, but I also think financial planning and in the market is amazing too.
Right.
I mean, for me personally, with real estate, because I'm in mortgages, it's just something I know more.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm more weighted in the real estate game than I am in equities or in the stock market.
Sure.
Personally.
Sure.
There's been times where I've been in the stock market, like right now I'm probably 90% real estate, like what you're saying.
Right.
But I think it's because I don't know the stock market.
Right.
And I need to maybe get to know it more.
Right. And I would say again, just diversifying the portfolio, the tool that you have at your disposal is the 401k. You know what I mean? You can put a lot away. You can put a lot of money away as a deferred comp, so you don't get paid tax. Right now, you could be in a tax group. I'm not making any assumptions, but I mean, if you make decent money, you're looking at 50% tax between state and federal. So to defer that to a time when you wouldn't pay those kinds of numbers
makes sense.
It makes sense to you right now, but then also it's also building up that other side of the equation.
Yeah.
So that that's I would tell people who are heavily real estated. I would say, listen, let's open a 401k. Let's open up a simple IRA. SEP would be great.
Yeah.
Something like that. And just, because again, if every dollar you put in yields a 50-cent tax savings, then why wouldn't you just max that out? Why would you want to give that money to the government when you could give it to yourself?
I'm wondering what the current statistics are right now for people turning 60 to 65 and their retirement savings. Do they have enough, or will they have to keep working?
I don't have the statistics by any means memorized or anything like that, but I would just tell you the feel for it. There was a generation that saved everything, and then this generation coming through right now, it's hit or miss for sure. This is a generation that's retiring right now that was told by the government, hey, you're paying Social Security, we'll take care of you. Yeah. And they believed them. Yeah. Unfortunately, they did. They believed them. So I would tell you that there are a lot of people in their 60s and 70s that don't have enough. I would say far more than need to be. You know what I mean? And we actually have, Millennials and Zs even who have more savings right now than the average, person in their 70s.
Wow. So why do you think the Millennials and Zs are saving more?
Well, they don't have a lot of costs. So most of those people are actually staying home with their mom and dad still.
Yeah.
They've got a job, but they don't want to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And so they're just putting money away, or they're buying real estate and not even living in it. They're just buying rentals and stuff. So I think that they're doing better. They've got a better handle on it. Yeah. Like I said, your generation is pretty good savers. I'm on the outside of your generation. I'm right there. I'm an X, but
okay.
But I mean, we're pretty good savers.
Yeah.
But the people above us definitely believe that the government was going to take care of them, and that's unfortunate. So, so I've seen a lot of people, working into their 70s, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it definitely is unfortunate, and I mean I see it too. I get calls, and housing is a big challenge for some of these retired people as well. Here's a question: can the market keep going up? If so, how and why does the market keep going up? I get this question often in real estate for home values. I'm curious why the market over the last couple of 100 years consistently increases over time.
Yeah. Well, the base layer to it is good question, by the way. The base layer of all of it is inflation, right? So we all have the person in our life that's like, I remember when I could buy a candy for a nickel. You know what I mean? I bought a candy bar the other day. It was $2. So the base layer of the growth of the market is inflation. So the reason we're in the market, though, is because consistently over time, the market has always beat inflation.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Well, so when we buy the market, right? So I think that part of it is the misconception of what the market is, right?
Yeah.
So we're looking at a 30,000 foot view when we say market.
Yeah.
And so you just have to break it down and go, okay, listen, I'm going to buy a mutual fund or some stocks, and I'm going to own part of Apple. I'm going to own part of Verizon. I'm going to own part of McDonald's.
Yeah.
And so being an owner in those companies are constantly growing. And so the value of that company grows as it brings in more revenue, cuts its cost, et cetera. That's why when you see a recession, you see the first thing that goes is jobs.
Yeah.
Because it's cutting costs so that the revenue can be better.
Yeah.
So the company's growing, and that's what we're investing in, is big companies that are growing. And so that's what the market's doing. It's just an overlay of all these small companies or big companies or middle companies all growing together. Yeah. And it's the same kind of thing. Like, typically speaking, if you went to a restaurant like 5 years ago, it was like $60, to go for two people to go have, dinner and maybe a glass of wine. Now it's $120.
Yeah, at least. Yeah.
$100 at least. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that tracks all the way across. Coca-Cola's cost more money.
Yeah.
McDonald's cost more money.
Yeah.
It's just so when they increase those revenues, they're increasing their profits. The size the company's growing. That reflects in their stock price.
Makes complete sense. I'm going to say it in a different way. So because of inflation, the government has a mandate to do 2% inflation every year. They have to create inflation is what their mandate is, one of their mandates. Money goes out, and eventually the smart people get the money.
Right.
Right. And the smart people create businesses, and those businesses grow, and then that money filters up, and into the market.
Absolutely.
And so in my mind, the way I think of it is consistently more money coming out into the economy, and that wasn't there before, and eventually it ends up in the market.
Right.
A lot of it does.
Right. Investors, 401ks, pension plans, et cetera.
It gets spent.
Yep.
We spend it, and then it's spent until someone puts it into the market.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Or it goes into, or that money. So I would say, like, we give about half our money away in taxes, and the other half we give to corporations through purchasing. That's why if you look, I mean, in your job, like, credit card debt is at all-time high right now, because a lot of people are used to having all the things they want. They don't used to that price increase.
Right.
So, and when people talk about 2% inflation, I always try to track it back and be like, yeah, that's on top of the 40% inflation we just went through.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's only 2% on top of whatever.
Yeah. It didn't slow. It didn't go the opposite. It didn't deflate. Yeah. Exactly. It actually is on top of all the prices that did go up.
Yeah. So the two things I talk about with this huge inflationary period that we went through is the number one thing that people need to understand is that the government just did one of the largest tax hikes they've ever done. So by pumping all that money into the economy and growing all of that inflation up, all of the things that we do are transactional in base, right? And the government gets a piece of that. So if you're a corporation and you made $200,000 this year, but next year you make $300,000, that might even put you in a new tax bracket. And so they're not only getting the additional $100,000 in revenue of taxes, they're going to get the new tax bracket too. So that was a giant. It was a very sly way of increasing tax bases.
Well, not only that, but they're able to take those new dollars to pay off old dollars of their debt.
Yeah. And it would have been nice when we were at 0%. It would have been nice if we refinanced our debt, but we did not, because the person that was in office at the time, everybody didn't like him. And so they didn't listen to a very smart idea that he had, because they didn't like him. And they could have refinanced trillions and trillions of dollars of debt at zero.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now we're refinancing at 6.
Yeah.
Trillions of dollars of debt.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty crazy. But the other thing to kind of like go into with the companies constantly growing and we're investing in the companies is that, people will often get into, like we talked a little just briefly about that we're in an election year. The market doesn't like uncertainty. So you're going to see, because like everybody knew when they got Trump, they were going to get this.
Yeah.
And when they got Biden, they were going to get this, because we've already seen it, because they've already done it. Yeah.
It's priced in.
But
Yeah.
the minute that Kamala came into the situation, immediately, like the market started waffling. Because
Confusion.
because it doesn't know what she's going to do. You know what I mean? We got the left saying she's going to do this, and the right saying she's going to do this. She doesn't even say what she's going to do half the time. You know what I mean? And when she does, it contradicts the last time she talked.
Yeah.
So the market hates that.
Yeah.
That's why the market's all over the place.
Yeah.
But once whoever they pick the president, whenever it's done, said and done, then the market will usually settle right back down.
Makes sense.
I don't know if you remember when Trump got elected, but the night he was getting elected was such a huge surprise. The S&P 500 and the NASDAQ and the Dow, the futures part was just like bottoming out. Like the news was all over. Like the futures were like so bad. This is going to wreck the economy, et cetera. Yeah. By the time the market opened, it was actually up a ton.
Wow.
So because like when it was happening, people were like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Uncertainty, right?
Yeah.
But the minute it was a done deal, certainty, market goes right back up.
Yep.
So yeah.
Wow. Yeah, and I actually remember that when Trump got elected, within a very short time, interest rates went up almost a full % that year. It's 2016 is when 2015, 16 interest rates went up. The reason why is because they knew it was going to be a booming economy, and so they were pricing in inflation increasing.
Right.
And so the interest rates went up.
Yep.
And I was pissed.
and the other thing to consider, especially since this is the podcast we're on right now, is that, with interest rates where they're at right now, they're stifling the growth and they're stifling inflation. But it hasn't really changed the monetary policy of the government. It's just the Fed that's trying to control this right now. The government still taxes and spends like crazy.
They're still spending like crazy. It's actually inflationary.
Yes.
The spending.
Exactly. And so while the Fed's trying to hold it off, it's still happening.
On the other
and when
side,
the Fed does release, you're going to see inflation go almost immediately back up again. I mean, we probably won't see levels that we saw recently, because
hopefully not.
I think they said like 60% of the money supply that's in right now wasn't existing in 2020. Like 60% of our money supply didn't exist 4 years ago. So you're not going to see that kind of inflationary, but you will see inflation again. And so I try to remind people that the two people that win in high inflationary periods are the government, because they get more taxes, and the people who owe money, because that money is worth less. So perfect example is if you buy a house that's $600,000 and it costs you $1 to buy a candy bar, you need 600,000 candy bars to buy that house off. If that candy bar now costs $2, the debt didn't change. Your $600,000 loan that you owe the bank is exactly the same as it was. But now you only need 300,000 candy bars. So the debt itself is less. Even though it looks the same on paper, it's actually less.
Yeah, I was just on a call a couple days ago with super smart guy that's in the business, and he was explaining this. And a 30-year mortgage is a hedge against inflation, because you're borrowing for 30 years out into the future, and 15 years from now, there's going to be a lot more dollars out there.
Right.
But you're paying off something that you borrowed 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's a genius way to short the American dollar. You're shorting the dollar.
Right.
With a 30-year mortgage.
Right. You really are. And I mean right now definitely, but 3 years ago, 4 years ago, oh my gosh. Right?
Oh, you were completely.
You're really getting free money. If you have a loan right now that's in 2.5 and 3.5, you're probably getting free money right now.
Yeah.
So,
because their income's gone up.
Yeah. Yeah, there's this fun trend going around on Instagram, which means it was according to my kids, which means it went around on TikTok 6 months ago. but the Instagram thing is people will go into their Walmart cart and they'll reorder everything to see how much it costs now versus what it cost like 4 years ago. And it's like $100 versus like $400. It's like a significant jump. It's not just like 100 versus 160. It's like 100 versus 400.
Wow.
And so once again, putting that back into debt, if it took $100 to buy groceries, now it takes $400, like your debt's really very much lower than you think it is.
Yeah.
The number may still be the same, but the actual debt itself is much less.
The challenge I have with this, it makes sense what we're talking about, and I completely get it. But explaining this to a first-time home buyer, is very challenging because there's so many things to learn and so many things. I mean, a mortgage, just that itself is amazing,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I mean, going back to kind of the investment side of it, not necessarily the first time home buyer side of it, but the investment side of it is what other investments can you get that kind of return on it with only 10% or less of the money invested? You know what I mean? Like, you know, you can't buy a stock. You can't buy $100,000 worth of stock with $3,000. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're leveraging the bank's money to do that.
Yeah.
And again, it's costing you something. But if luckily for us, we're in California where that's going to probably outpace just about any interest rate you might pay.
Yeah.
At least, again, short term wise, we might be in a bad interest rate market, but we can always refinance it in a couple of years. And again, now California real estate's probably going to outpace your mortgage.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then once again, if I know that my mortgage is gonna go down at about the same rate as the market's going up, then I know that I'm actually making money on the deal. If not,
Totally.
yeah. And then if it's a rental, then you're depreciating it. You get a bunch of extra
all
tax
the other
benefits
stuff.
to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would just say the biggest thing to the question you kind of just said was like, you know, just start working with somebody and get a relationship with them. Let them coach you up because guys like Pete, they know what they're doing and they know how to like get you into your first home, but they also know how to get you into your seventh one.
Absolutely. What are some practical tips as a financial advisor for average person that only has a 401k for their retirement and maybe owns a home? What else should they be doing?
So I think you had already mentioned like living below your means, trying to have some residual income to invest because first of all, most people, I would say 90 to 95% of people that I talk to are not maxing out their 401k. So they're only doing the bare minimum to get the match, which is great. I mean, you definitely want the match because that's free money. You definitely need to take that.
Yeah.
So if you baby step it in, the first thing you need to do is get your match. The second thing you need to do is, in my opinion, open up like a Roth IRA.
Okay.
And the reason I say a Roth IRA is because if you look at how things are taxed, Roth, you put the money in after tax, if you're young especially, right? If you're older, it doesn't matter as much. But you put the money in after tax, it grows tax deferred, and you take it out later on in life tax free. So again, like I always like just do simple math. I draw $1, then I draw $2, I draw $4, $8, $16, $32. That's a doubling effect.
Okay.
And I say, okay, which one do you want to pay taxes on? And everybody's like, I always want to pay the dollar. I'm like, that's a Roth. But we all do the $32 one. We all put our money into the 401k, which again, you know, if we're talking about compensation and we're deferring it for taxes, it's one thing. But if you can eat the taxes now, you should 100% do that.
So the question is, will taxes be more in the future or more today?
That's the second question I always ask. That's the exact second question. And it's always going to be more.
Yeah.
The governments never seem to figure out a way to like cut our taxes. They always seem like they're cutting our taxes, but the next thing you know, they're right back up. So, so going back to what I'm saying is like, so first thing is baby step, I would say is like get your match, you know, and if you don't work for a company that has a 401k by now, you should definitely look around because it's so prevalent. And in California, they have to provide a plan, but it doesn't have to be matched. So I would definitely look for one that matches.
For how many employees? Or
I think it's like 4 or 5 employees now.
that you have to have.
Yeah, you have to have something in place. So
for
they have
retirement.
And California has a plan that you can get into. It's kind of a pain, but you can check the box.
And that's something new.
Correct.
I heard
fairly
about that.
new. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But like here locally, you know, just to give a shout out to them, but like Wind River, you know, the Redco people and stuff like that. I mean, they're matching like 7%. So if you're putting in 10 and they're putting in 7, I mean, that's a huge number.
That's a huge,
Yeah. And so another thing that people don't think about is profit sharing. So perfect example of that is Winco here in town. So Winco people, you know, they're making the same wages as somebody at Costco or probably Safeway. Maybe they're not even making as much as people at Safeway.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they're getting profit sharing. They're getting all this money from the company growing. It's going right back into their thing. So, I mean, I know people who worked for Winco for 20 years who have well over $1 million in their savings plans.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's huge. You know what I mean? Like, again, if you take somebody at Safeway or Rayleigh's or whatever, they don't have $1 million typically.
No. And I agree with you because I've done loans for people at Winco. I'm like, you have how much in your 401k?
Right.
Did you add a zero? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But you're right. It's profit share. It's how they got there.
And the third piece that I always tell people to look at is the government way, because, you know, almost all governments overpay because they're not paying for it out of their pockets. They're paying for it out of our pockets. So the wage itself is overpaid. And then on top of it, then they're going to give you some sort of 401k maybe. They're all 457. They're probably going to give you some sort of pension. I mean, we have people right now in the city of Reading who haven't worked in 10 years who make $250,000 a year off their pension. You know what I mean? And they're still like 60. You know what I mean? Like you can actually look all that up and see.
Wow.
But I mean, like, so consider that route if you have the potential, like you want to look for retirement.
Yeah.
But going back to your original thing, I would say, like, get your match in your 401k. The next thing I would say is open a Roth, max that out for you, max that out for your spouse. Okay. And if you're now sitting there saying, hey, I want to put more money in, I'd go back to the 401k. And then you can choose whether you want that money to go into a Roth 401k or a regular 401k based on taxes. Max that out. And if you still have money after that, that's when we start opening what's called a brokerage account. So it would operate the same way as a 401k. It just doesn't have that tax umbrella over it.
Interesting. Okay, so the Roth is super important. After you get the 401k, you can still have money left over. Start that Roth as soon as possible. What's the max right now?
I think we're at 7,000 for Roth, and then I think you get another 1,000 if you're over 50.
Oh, got it.
They change it so often. I literally check it every single time.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't memorize it anymore because they change it every year.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Do you recommend your clients to save 20% of their purchase price before they purchase a home? Or when would you advise your customers to purchase their first home?
So I would definitely defer to an expert. That's not really my area of expertise, so I don't usually go there. I feel like when I was younger, I always felt like I had to do the 20% thing. And now I don't even think twice about if I can get away with putting zero down, I probably would.
Yeah.
So it just depends on, you guys run the numbers and you know what they can afford. I typically do believe that the numbers are usually a little bit too generous. Like in other words, like they say, hey, you can afford a $3,000 payment. Maybe not. Maybe it's more like $2,500.
Oh, for sure. The bank will approve someone more than what they typically want to spend.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I would tell people just be really careful of that because I know that you know this too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But if you tell somebody that they can spend $500,000 on a house, all they start doing is looking at $600,000 houses.
Correct.
So it's like, you know what I mean? Like if you said $500,000, maybe go look at a $450,000 house. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Be a little bit more conservative, especially if we're talking about a first home.
Oh, for sure.
Keep it down as low. I mean, there are still houses in this town for $280. You know what I mean? They're not
250, 280. Yeah, I do. I probably do 1 or 2 loans a month for in the 200,000 range.
And those houses will be tremendous rentals down the road.
Oh, big time.
You know what I mean? The ones that are at 600 right now probably wouldn't be a great rental 5 years from now.
Correct.
So, but the ones that are 280, 300, I mean, I live in a neighborhood where there's houses for 380 to 420. And I mean, you could buy those all day long and rent them.
Yeah.
So I would just, consider if you're looking at a home buyer, the other thing I think is really odd is when people like go try to find the crazy land out on the, acreage. And it's like, that's cool if you want to live out there for 30 years, but you got to sell that at some point too. So be careful with those way out in the ways, mobile homes, So anyway. That's just my opinion.
Well, that and the insurance costs is the outskirts. The farther away, farther out, the more expensive the homeowner's insurance will be.
Yeah, isn't it incredible? I mean, really, like I had a client who had $1,200 a year homeowner's insurance at Lake Tahoe, not Lake Tahoe, but Lakehead.
Lakehead.
At $1,200 a year, and now it's $1,200 a month.
Holy
it's like
cow.
$15,000 a year now.
Wow.
So people should definitely be careful of where they're going.
Yeah. I agree on the affordability thing. Like live within your means. You don't necessarily need to save 20%. If someone asks me, hey, should I save 20%? I always say no, absolutely not. Keep the money in reserves. Make sure you have a payment that's affordable. Yes, you'll have mortgage insurance, but that mortgage insurance isn't saving you the comfort that you have of that reserve in the account. Right.
I would even say to pay the mortgage insurance up front as a lump sum instead of paying that monthly, because then you pay it the one time and then whereas if you pay it monthly, if they don't check it for you, like some, you're better at this than I am, but some of them, like they say, hey, listen, I'm at 80% loan to value. They go, you're right. Let's just take it off. Mm-hmm. But most of the places are like, yeah, so what? Like you have to refinance it and reappraise it to get that taken off.
Yeah, so FHA loan, you can't get rid of mortgage insurance. You have to. It's for the life of the loan. You have to refi. On a conventional loan, yes, you have to have it for 2 years. After 2 years, once you have 25% equity, you can get an appraisal and the mortgage insurance will be removed.
So like right now, it wouldn't matter. You just pay the monthly mortgage insurance because you're realistically going to refi it anyway.
Most of the time, and I do show customers the upfront versus the monthly mortgage insurance, and and most of the time they'll pick the monthly because obviously we're in a higher interest rate environment.
Right.
You know, if they pay right now, if you buy out the mortgage insurance that one time, like you're saying, it's about 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
Before it pays for itself.
Right. Which is not too, again, if you have the idea that this is going to be a long-term home that I either own or B, own and rent.
The ones that got,
you want to pay that up front if you can.
Yeah. The one, when rates were at 2 and 3%, I was doing upfront mortgage insurance.
Yeah.
All
the
day,
time.
all day long.
I refinanced every property that I owned during that time period. And I mean, the only thing that I wish I had done differently, and I wasn't thinking about it at the time, I was just so happy to get 2.875 everywhere.
Yeah.
But the one thing I wish I'd have bought points. I wish I'd have paid some points and got it down to 2.25 or whatever.
Yeah.
Because points were cheap then too.
Yeah, they were cheap. Exactly. Yep.
So that's the one thing I did. So if it happens again, I'm going to refinance everything and pay the points.
Yep.
So
I think we talked about this. Basic strategies for someone in their 40s should start doing right away.
Right.
Who is behind and does not have anything saved for retirement. So we're talking about, someone, what would you call those? Not millennial. Is that a millennial?
I think 42 is still X.
X, Gen X, yeah. So Gen Xers that haven't really saved.
Yeah.
And what?
I would say start now, and then what I would say is like you don't go to the gym, put 400 pounds on the bar, and just go for it, right? That's how you tear your shoulders apart. But you got to start somehow. Yeah. So what I would say is if it's not going through your payroll system, like just take it out of your payroll. But if it's not going through payroll system, there's like they don't offer 401k or whatever, treat it like a bill. Treat it just like a car payment.
Yeah.
If you're putting more money into your car payment than you are your 401k, you've got it all wrong.
At that age, yeah.
You've got it all wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? 750. I mean, it's not. I think the average car payment now is $500 a month.
No, it's more than that. It's like 800.
Yeah. So I mean, $800. If you were doing that, if you were just saying, "Listen, I'm just going to drive this trashy car for 5 years, and take that $800 and put it into your 401k," it would drastically make a difference in your retirement. Drastically.
Yeah.
Drastically.
Yeah.
So I don't know what drastically.
That's really, really good advice.
Yeah. So
really
I would say like right now, if you've got a car payment and you're getting $700, $800 a month, don't go buy a new car. Just pay that thing down and then drive it for another 5 years and take that same amount of money you were putting in a car payment, put that into investments.
I like it.
And it'll make a huge difference. Plus, it's like I said, you're getting the bar. Now you put a little bit of weight on the bar.
Yeah.
Maybe $800, the next year you can turn it into $1,000. Next year you can put $1,200 a month away.
Yeah.
People go, $1,200? And I go, trust me, you're spending it somewhere.
Yeah.
You're spending $1,200.
Yeah.
It's not going into your retirement.
It's true. Yeah. What are your thoughts for these 40-year-olds to count on Social Security in 20 years?
I get this question a lot, and obviously people are afraid that Social Security will not be there. I believe that it will be there. I don't have a crystal ball, but I would tell you that no one ever sits there and goes, "I wonder if welfare will be there next year." That's an entitlement that we give out as a government, as a community, that nobody pays into except for taxpayers. So in this case, they're actually tracking how much money you're putting in. I can see changes to the system, and what I mean by that is like that just happened. You were putting in 5.5% into your Social Security, and your employer was matching you 5.5%. Now that number I think is 6, right? So they did bump it up, roughly 10% to get more money into the system. So I think that they'll continue to do things like that. So I do believe that it will be there. Will it look exactly the same? No. I would just tell you never depend on it as your retirement plan. It's a nice little supplement. By the time you get to retirement, it might pay your Verizon bill. It's nice to have, right?
Yeah.
I've done my calculations. I know exactly what I'm going to be getting at 62 and 67 and 70. But I would say, like, if you're going to depend on Social Security to be your marker, you're going to be in trouble because it's not going to be enough. Most people, if they got their Social Security that they're supposed to get 20 years from now, right now, they still couldn't live on it right now, let alone inflationary period where they get that's going to cost less. There's actually a thing called the Silver Surfers, and it's a group of women that are kind of supposed to outlast Social Security. We're seeing a lot of women get to their 90s. And so if you look at it, if you've got Social Security is paying this much and Medicare is like down here, right? Social Security is growing at 2.5%. So Medicare is growing at 5%. So as it gets, they're actually thinking that by the time a lady gets to 90, that her Medicare will cost more than her Social Security.
And so the cost of Medicare is increasing faster than what Social Security is increasing.
Correct. So there's a whole group of people out there that they think that they're actually going to be negative when Medicare continues to raise the rates the way they do.
Yeah, so the Medicare might be more than what they're actually getting for
From
Social
Social
Security.
Security,
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So
Wow.
I mean, it's not. I'm trying to stare,
Yeah.
put anybody into fear.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, you need to do more.
Yeah.
You need to
Let's
do more
figure
than
it
Social
out.
Security.
Yeah. Let's figure it out. Part of your bio, I want to hear about this, the feeding the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you help local kids eat.
Yes. I was looking for something kind of fun to do as a, like there's a lot of golf tournaments in this town. There's a lot of 5K runs, things like that.
Yeah.
But I'm looking for something fun to do that wasn't the same as everybody else, but also just like, could raise money for charity. I ran across this event. It's in Boerne, Texas, not spelt the same way our Boerne is spelt, but it was called the Boerne Half K. And I was like, what's this? And it basically is a joke on 5K runs. So instead of going 3.1 miles, you go 0.31 miles.
Oh.
Yeah. So you go 1,600 feet total. So we have it set up to where you go 800 feet. You don't run, you walk. You go 800 feet. We have like jugglers and things like that along the way, along the walk. At the 800-foot mark, the turn, as we call it, you get a donut. And then you go back 800 feet to the finish line. Everybody who finishes gets a first place medal.
Wow.
And they get a beer.
Yeah.
And, we get them a little sticker that says 0.31 they can put on the back of their car if they want to. And it's like I said, it's just a goof. And then afterwards, we try to like throw a little bit of a party. We have foam pits and DJs and
When
things
is
for the
this?
kids. We do it in June. We do it the day before Father's Day the Saturday before Father's Day every year.
Really? And where's it at?
We do it at Caldwell Park at the Lake Reading Pavilion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So we have great sponsors. Jeremiah Wheeler Landscaping is our title sponsor.
Okay.
Applied Technologies, Sabrina Schmidt, myself. We have like a bunch of people who have been like in from the beginning, putting money in. So we have great sponsors on it. We have a pretty good turnout. I'd say like, for me, I wanted like 1,000 people there, but like we're getting like 300 people there. And so we're raising decent amounts of money. It's super fun.
Yeah.
But all the money goes to, at first I was giving it to Shasta Lake Kiwanis. And they're great. They're great. They feed 200 kids every Friday. They give them basically a bag of food that they can take home over the weekend because a lot of these kids don't eat over the weekend.
Really?
Yeah, 200 kids. 200 kids that don't eat, that would not eat otherwise without these bags of food.
Wow.
So that's how we started giving it to them. But they're actually doing really well for fundraising themselves. So because of it, we always wanted to. When I say we, I mean me and then my people who helped me start it. But we always wanted to get it to expand. So because of that, we started the Reading Sundial Kiwanis here in town. I am now the president of that Kiwanis group, and we have now taken that money and we're giving it to the Reading Sundial Kiwanis, and then they're giving it to, right now, the program that we're behind 100% is the Northern Valley Catholic Social Services.
Oh, yeah.
They have a pantry program in 8 of the Enterprise elementary schools. So any kid at any time can walk down there with a teacher, a counselor, administrator, whatever. They can walk down there and take whatever food they want, and they can take it home with them. They can eat it right there, whatever they want.
No way, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. So in our goal, and we've been doing really well with the half K. We've got another event coming up in October called the Shake Off, where we're going to do like cocktails, and every restaurant's going to be able to put in like a signature cocktail, and we'll vote on who did the best one.
Nice.
But like that should be a good fundraiser. So our goal ultimately is to get it from Enterprise over to the Reading, like the Shasta side, if you will.
Got it.
I think that's Reading Elementary, and this is Enterprise Elementary.
I see.
But we want to like every middle school. The first thing is we got Enterprise. The second thing is we want the other middle schools. Once we get all the middle schools involved, then we want to get it up to the high schools. So we just wanted to make sure that I saw something that said like we don't have a lack of food. Well, there's no such thing. We have more food than we could ever make.
Yeah.
We have a lack of love. Right. And so I think part of the issue is I think a lot of people want to support a program like this. They just didn't know it existed.
Totally.
They didn't know that there was 200 kids in Central Valley that don't have food on the weekends.
I had no idea.
So that's mostly why we do the goofy events, because the goofy events create awareness, and then ultimately, like I said, we want to make sure I'm not going to rest until every kid in this town has food.
Wow.
So yeah,
that's awesome.
Thank you for asking me about that.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's super awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, loved it.
Yeah. Oh, tell people how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, so if you Google Chris Hall, you can pretty much get a hold of me right away. My company is Reading Financial Advisors. Our phone number is 530-248-6900. The website's readingfinancialadvisors.com. And again, like if you Google Chris Hall in Redding, California, you're going to find me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, bro.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be
Yeah,
here.
definitely.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks. Please also like and subscribe if you could. It really helps out the channel, helps us out, get this content out to more people. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.